Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to Stone, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So, picture a small town, kind of a
Yes.
place where everybody knows their neighbors.
Yeah.
Doors are left unlocked.
Right.
You would think it'd be a safe place, right?
Sure.
But looking beneath that,
Yeah.
that idyllic surface is a story
Yeah.
that reminds us that darkness can really be anywhere.
It really can. And I think what's so unsettling about this case in particular is that it just completely shatters that sense of safety and security that you would associate with a small town.
Right.
And it forces us to confront, an uncomfortable truth about those that we put our trust in, those in positions of authority,
Take that.
that they can sometimes betray that trust.
Yeah, and that's what makes the story of Sandra Brewermore so unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
She was a 23-year-old teacher's assistant,
Mm.
and she was found dead in her apartment.
Yeah.
Officially, her death was ruled as a suicide.
Right.
But Sandra's family, they believe there's more to the story. They suspect foul play, and their suspicions point to a very troubling relationship that she had with a Stone police officer, Matthew Farewell.
And it's not just a simple relationship.
Right.
The allegations here suggest, a much larger pattern of grooming and abuse.
Right.
That may have started when Sandra was just 15 years old.
Wow.
And it all stems from her involvement in this program called the Stone Police Explorers Program.
Oh, wow.
This program was really meant to inspire young people who are interested in law enforcement.
Right. Yeah.
But in this case, it became the backdrop for something far more sinister.
So this Police Explorers program, it was designed to help young minds, explore a career in law enforcement. But instead, it ended up being this breeding ground for manipulation and abuse.
It really did.
And it just goes to show you that even programs with the best intentions, they can be twisted,
Absolutely.
It can be exploited.
For sure.
So let's unpack this a little.
Sure.
Tell me more about this Explorers program.
Okay, so think back to, when you were a teenager,
Okay.
you're looking for role models, you're looking for guidance,
Right.
a sense of belonging, maybe even a path for your future.
Sure.
Well, the Explorers program offered all of that
Right.
with the added allure of working side by side with real police officers.
Yeah.
But in Stone, that trust was shattered.
Wow.
We have Robert Devine, he's the leader of the program.
Okay.
And even before this case, he was known around town for inappropriate behavior with young girls.
Oh, wow.
He had been a school resource officer, back in 2001.
Oh, wow.
And even then, there were already whispers about him.
Oh, so this Robert Devine, he already had this questionable reputation.
Yeah.
And then you have the Farewell brothers,
Right.
Matthew and William.
Yeah,
Both of them are police officers, and
Yeah.
they were both deeply involved in this program as well.
that's right.
Now, you mentioned allegations against all three of these men.
Yeah. So a lawsuit that was filed by Sandra's family alleges that all three men engaged in this really horrifying pattern of grooming and abuse.
Right.
And to think that this could have been going on for so long, right under everybody's noses, it's really disturbing.
It's almost unimaginable, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned grooming. I think for those that are unfamiliar with that term, could you explain exactly what that entails
Sure.
and how that might have manifested in this case?
So grooming is this very calculated process where an abuser will build a relationship with a young person,
Okay.
and often a minor,
Right.
with the intention of ultimately exploiting them sexually.
Right.
This grooming can involve gifts, special attention, creating a sense of trust, a sense of dependency, and really all of it is designed to lower the victim's inhibitions
Yes.
and make them more vulnerable to abuse.
Yeah.
And in Sandra's case, the lawsuit alleges that this grooming started when she was just a teenager
Wow.
in the Explorers program.
So we have this seemingly idyllic small town. This program designed to help young people
Right.
and these authority figures who are allegedly anything but honorable.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Sandra for a second.
Right.
What kind of person was she?
So from the accounts that we've gathered,
Mhm.
Sandra was a young woman who was really craving stability and guidance.
Okay.
She was perhaps a bit naive, maybe someone who overshared personal details,
Okay.
and this might have made her an easy target for manipulation.
Yeah.
She saw these officers, particularly Matthew,
Yeah.
as figures of authority, mentors, even
Okay.
someone she could confide in.
She's just looking for direction and someone to trust.
Yeah.
And these men took advantage of that.
It's awful.
It's sickening. Now, the lawsuit mentions an inappropriate relationship between Sandra and Matthew.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay. So the lawsuit alleges that Matthew began a sexual relationship with Sandra when she was just 15,
Oh my gosh.
and he was 26.
That's terrible.
This continued for years,
Wow.
even into her adulthood.
Wow.
And then when Sandra became pregnant with Matthew's child, things escalated dramatically.
So you have this young woman finding herself in that kind of situation, pregnant by a man who held power over her. It's hard to even fathom the fear and desperation she must have been going through.
No.
What was Matthew's reaction to the pregnancy?
So, according to the lawsuit, Matthew was furious.
Okay.
He allegedly threatened Sandra, demanded she keep the pregnancy a secret.
Right.
And this raises serious concerns about his motive.
Yeah.
I mean, did he want to protect his reputation,
Right.
his career, or was there something even darker going on?
It certainly creates a pretty powerful motive.
Yeah.
And tragically, it seems like Sandra's worst fears came true because she confided in a coworker
Right.
about the pregnancy and the threats that Matthew was making.
Yeah.
And she even uttered this really chilling premonition. If something happens to me, he would be the one responsible.
It really gives you chills, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. It sends shivers down your spine.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the level of fear and helplessness that she must have been experiencing.
Right.
To have that foreboding sense of danger,
Yeah.
to actually voice it out loud, it's a chilling reminder of the control that Matthew may have had over her.
Absolutely.
And tragically, despite this warning, nothing was done.
I know.
Can you believe that?
It's hard to believe, right?
It's awful.
Yeah. That's right. According to the lawsuit, Sandra's coworker reported her concerns to the school principal,
Okay.
Darren Reynolds, but no action was taken.
It's unbelievable.
It's really concerning, right? It really raises questions about, the responsibility of those in positions of authority to protect, vulnerable people like Sandra.
Right.
Why wasn't her safety prioritized? Was there some kind of culture of, just dismissing these concerns?
Right.
Or was it just pure negligence?
It's just unfathomable to me that someone could hear a statement like that. If something happens to me, he'll be responsible and not take any immediate action.
It's crazy. Right.
It's just a gut-wrenching example of how institutions can really fail the very people that they're supposed to be protecting.
Totally.
So what happened next?
Well, tragically, Sandra disappeared.
Oh my God.
And a few days later, she was found dead in her apartment.
This is awful.
The official ruling was suicide.
Okay.
But, the circumstances surrounding her death
Right.
and her previous warnings and the lack of a thorough investigation really leave a lot of unanswered questions.
Right.
I mean, even if we were to accept the suicide ruling, the question remains, was she driven to that point
Right.
by the abuse and the fear that she was experiencing?
It's just a heartbreaking question that really underscores, the devastating impact of grooming and abuse.
Absolutely.
Victims so often feel trapped with nowhere to turn.
It's like their agency's been taken away. Their ability to make their own choices freely.
Exactly.
It's just gone.
It's been stripped away.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important for us to understand the psychological manipulation that underpins these situations.
Right.
Abusers like Matthew
Right.
and potentially the others that were involved,
Mm-hmm.
they use their position of power to control their victims, to isolate them, to make them dependent. And it's this insidious process that can have these really devastating long-term consequences.
So let's get into some of the specific details of Sandra's death.
Okay.
We know that Matthew visited her apartment the night before she was found.
Yes.
What do we know about that visit?
So surveillance footage shows Matthew entering Sandra's apartment building the night before her body was discovered.
Okay.
And he actually admits to being the last person to see her alive.
Wow.
However, investigators couldn't find any communication between them on his phone.
What?
He claims to have deleted their messages.
Oh, well, that's suspicious.
It really is.
Deleting those messages, especially given the circumstances, seems incredibly incriminating.
Right.
What was he trying to hide?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the lack of those phone records really makes it hard to piece together what exactly happened that night.
Right.
Did they argue?
Yeah.
Did he threaten her again?
Right.
We just don't know.
These are questions that remain unanswered.
Exactly.
And then there's Robert Devine.
Yes.
Didn't investigators uncover something disturbing about his online activity?
Yeah. This is where the case takes another unsettling turn.
Okay.
Investigators discovered a secret Facebook profile under the name Marty Riggs
Okay.
that was traced back to Robert Devine.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And he used this profile to engage in explicit conversations with Sandra.
Oh, wow.
Devine claims that his account was hacked,
Okay.
but investigators did not find his explanation convincing.
Wow. So you have the leader of this youth program, this man who was supposed to be a mentor to these kids,
Right.
engaging in inappropriate online conversations with this young woman he was allegedly grooming. It's pretty disturbing.
It is. It really adds like another layer of manipulation to this already complex and horrifying story.
Right.
I mean, Devine was using this fake identity to gain Sandra's trust.
Yeah.
Just further blurring the lines of appropriate behavior.
Right.
And taking advantage of her vulnerability.
So what happened to these men after the allegations came to light?
Okay, so
Were there any consequences for their actions?
in the aftermath of the scandal,
Yeah.
Robert Devine, Matthew Farewell, and William Farewell all resigned from the police department.
Okay.
But what's really kind of shocking is that Robert Devine received a full pension,
Are you kidding me?
despite the very serious allegations against him.
Wow.
It just feels like a slap in the face
Yeah.
to Sandra's family and just a blatant disregard for the gravity of this situation.
It certainly raises questions about whether there was any attempt to kind of sweep this under the rug,
Yeah.
to protect the reputations of these officers
Yeah.
rather than actually try to seek justice for Sandra.
It seems that way.
And that's a question that Sandra's family is determined to answer.
Yes.
They filed a wrongful death lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
alleging this decade-long pattern of grooming and abuse by all three officers.
It's awful.
And accusing the Stone Police Department of a deliberate cover-up.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a wrongful death lawsuit entails?
Sure.
And what Sandra's family hopes to achieve through this legal action?
So, a wrongful death lawsuit allows the family of a deceased person to seek compensation
Okay.
if they believe that their loved one's death was caused by the negligence or wrongful actions of another party.
Okay.
In this case, Sandra's family is alleging that the actions of these officers
Right.
and the police department's failure to properly investigate and address the situation directly contributed to her death.
Right.
They're seeking financial compensation, of course,
Mm.
but even more importantly, I think they're demanding accountability,
Right.
and they're hoping to expose the truth about what happened to their daughter.
It sounds like a long and arduous battle, though, especially when you consider the power dynamics that are at play here.
Yeah.
Taking on an entire police department is no easy feat.
It's a David and Goliath situation.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the challenges that Sandra's family might face in proving their case?
Well, they're going to have to overcome a number of hurdles,
Okay.
including potential biases within the justice system itself,
Right.
the inherent difficulty in proving a cover-up,
Right.
and the possibility of, limited evidence.
Yeah.
They really need to convince a jury that Sandra's death was not just a personal tragedy,
Right.
but the direct result of these systemic failures and deliberate actions by those in power.
It's just a reminder that justice is not always easily attained,
No, it's not.
especially for those who are already marginalized or vulnerable.
Right.
But Sandra's family isn't giving up.
That's right.
They are fighting for her, they're fighting for the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and they're fighting for a system that truly protects its citizens.
Good for them.
And it's a battle that really highlights this much larger issue,
Mm-hmm.
the pervasive problem of abuse of power,
Yeah.
particularly within institutions like law enforcement.
Right.
I mean, we've seen similar cases all across the country.
We have.
And these are stories that really shake our trust in those who are sworn to protect us.
Absolutely. It's a disturbing trend, and it demands our attention.
It really does.
Each case underscores the need for comprehensive reform within law enforcement.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that officers are held to the highest ethical standards,
Right.
that there are clear and accessible mechanisms for reporting and investigating misconduct,
Mm-hmm.
and that victims are supported and protected,
Right.
not silenced or ignored.
You're really hitting on a critical point there.
Yeah.
The need to support and believe victims.
Yes.
Sandra's story just highlights the tragic consequences of what can happen when those in a position to help
Right.
just fail to act.
Absolutely. Too often victims, especially young people, are afraid to come forward. They're afraid they won't be believed,
Right.
or they'll be blamed, or they'll face retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
We need to create a culture where victims feel safe
Right.
and empowered to speak out, knowing that they'll be taken seriously and supported.
It's a systemic problem that requires a multifaceted solution, really.
It does.
What are some concrete steps we can take to address these issues, both within law enforcement and in our communities?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to implement robust training programs for law enforcement officers that focus on recognizing and preventing grooming and abuse.
Right.
And this training should go beyond simply outlining the law.
Yeah.
It needs to really delve into the psychology of abusers, the subtle ways they manipulate their victims, the red flags to watch out for.
Give officers the tools to identify this potentially harmful behavior.
Exactly.
Both within their ranks and in the communities they serve.
Yeah.
But training is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
It is.
What else needs to change?
I think we need to create independent oversight bodies that can investigate allegations of misconduct without bias.
Okay.
This would help ensure that complaints are taken seriously.
Right.
And that there are real consequences for those who abuse their power.
Okay.
And I think we need to change the culture within law enforcement.
Right.
We need to foster an environment where speaking up against wrongdoing is encouraged and protected, not punished.
It's about creating a system that values transparency and accountability.
It really is.
And on a more personal level,
yeah,
what can we, just as individuals, do to make a difference?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
You know, we need to educate ourselves about the dynamics of grooming and abuse, the warning signs, the resources that are available to victims. We can't be bystanders. If we see something that seems wrong, we need to speak up.
Absolutely.
Whether it's reporting it to the appropriate authorities, offering support to the victim, or simply making it clear that that behavior is unacceptable.
We need to break the silence that often surrounds these issues.
We do.
Even a seemingly small action can have a ripple effect, potentially saving someone from harm.
Absolutely.
Speaking up can be intimidating, but it's crucial.
It is.
Now, there are organizations that are dedicated to supporting survivors of abuse and advocating for change.
Yes.
And we can support them through volunteering, donations, or simply spreading awareness about their work.
That's right.
So as we conclude this deep dive into this tragic story of Sandra Burmore, what key takeaway should our listeners keep in mind?
I think Sandra's story is a stark reminder that abuse of power can really happen anywhere.
It can.
Even in the places that we perceive as safe.
Right.
And I think it's a call to action for all of us to be vigilant, to speak out against injustice, to support survivors, and to demand better from those in positions of authority. We can honor Sandra's memory by working together to create a world where these kinds of abuses are no longer tolerated.
Well said. Let's not let Sandra's story be forgotten.
Yeah.
Let it be a catalyst for change, a reminder that we all have a role to play in protecting the vulnerable and holding those in power accountable.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.